With all the talk of net neutrality and the growing fears of free speech being attacked all over the internet, from Facebook censoring people for saying mean things such as the word idiot, to Facebook and YouTube now to be potentially fined by $5 million if they are unable to remove hate speech on their platform within 24 hours, which anyone who has had that issue with disputing those claims in the past will know it takes days to weeks to resolve issues. In simpler terms, websites such as Facebook and YouTube are going to continue being more heavy-handed on censorship rather than worrying about massive fines, whether you're guilty of hate speech or not. To Twitter removing so-called offensive tweets and outright banning users for simply speaking out about things such as politics or religious or even personal opinions and beliefs. Quite a lot of people are worried about the future of their favorite platforms and how governments are approaching the internet as a whole. Net neutrality is at the core of everything the surface web is. Surface web, for those of you who are not aware, is the part of the internet we can access freely and openly without getting specialized programs to allow us to access parts of the deep or dark web, such as Tor, otherwise known as the onion router. With all the growing concerns over the last few years, the freedom of ideas and information without bias has been under attack. Companies who give us access to the internet via broadband and cable and fiber optic and distribution centers to which we are all connected to, the internet service providers, or ISP for short, such as AT&T and Verizon, who are some of the major and only players that provide internet access to the majority of the United States, want to get more control over how the distribution of the data across the internet is shared. And if that happens in the US, other countries and companies across the globe will follow suit. In order to explain this clearly and very simply, we have to have a look at this in a few separate pieces. Firstly, what is net neutrality? It is the principle that internet service providers should enable access to all content and applications regardless of their source, and without favoring or blocking particular products or websites. What that means is if the rules in the ISPs are no longer classed as a utility, they can choose to slow down or speed up connectivity to a particular platform, unless they decide to boost or even to slow the connection to said platform. Imagine this for a second. Netflix, Hulu, or Amazon. Some of the main sites that people go to watch movies, documentaries, TV shows, all that jazz. Imagine they refused to pay a certain payment to AT&T and in response they slowed the connectivity to the site to the point where it took several hours to load even a single image on the page. Which at this point, they don't have to pay AT&T or Verizon or any of the ISPs, but if these rules are passed that net neutrality is cancelled, they likely will have to in order to survive. After a certain amount of time, the page would refuse to load and your web browser would refuse to connect. This would not only remove any possible revenue sources to be able to access the platform, but it would also make the platform non-existent. In other words, you can't access all those favorite shows because Netflix, Amazon, or Hulu decided not to pay AT&T for something that should have already been free access. This would be blackmail and extortion. Now, this may not affect you personally, so let me say it like this. Say you were working for a company or wanted to set one up yourself, and in order to have an online store, you had to strike a deal with the ISPs, which normally you wouldn't have to, so that you could even sell or talk to potential customers. Because without their blessing, they could easily shut you down. The ISP could and most likely would attempt to extort money out of you so your website would not collapse. If net neutrality is destroyed, then the free market on the internet would be dead, as it gives major companies the ability to eliminate any form of competition from the internet. As you have to remember as well, multinational companies work alongside each other as well as the ISPs, and they could easily just pay the ISP to sabotage competition, but due to the fact the ISPs are individual companies who are no longer utilities, they would be able to do that without any fear or concern, as it would be difficult to track. As currently, by the laws in place for net neutrality at this moment in time, that is illegal to do. The internet itself thrives off of net neutrality. Without it, the internet would not be able to flourish as it once has. And the only parts of the internet that would be able to, if net neutrality is abolished, wouldn't even be affected, because that is the deep and the dark web. Sites and parts of the internet that we are not able to access on the public domain without using specialized software. Governments are trying so desperately to gain some kind of foothold on controlling what people consume on the internet and what they're saying and even doing. It's especially apparent with all the laws that are being placed in the EU and in European countries and even in America today to try and get a foothold on hate speech. The majority of that hate speech just happens to be political opinions or opinions that are not well liked by the government. or political parties for that matter, or even some religious communities for that matter. Whether you agree with what I'm saying or disagree, the facts are there, and if you think I'm fear-mongering, that is your choice to believe that, and you are free to express that opinion. However, soon enough, if ISPs are allowed to do what they wish, then you may not in time even be able to express that thought or opinion. So, what can we do about this? Right now, people are preparing for July 12th, and I don't mean just in Ireland, I mean all over the world. To help show the major ISPs and the governments that want to pass the abolishing of net neutrality, that us everyday citizens and a lot of companies alike, that we will not stand for this. If you want to help with fighting for net neutrality, if you enjoy the internet and all the resources that you can see and experience and have, then do yourself a favor. Go to www.battleforthenet.com/July 12. This is a very important thing to do and to be aware of because, like I said, net neutrality is extremely important to the existence and even the survival of the internet. If you have a job that has any connection to the internet, whether it be your business, your family life, your social life, whatever it is all connected through social medias or some kind of public domain. Hell, even using things like Amazon to buy your stuff from, or going to Netflix to watch your movies and your shows. If companies like Amazon and Netflix are even fighting to keep net neutrality, that should tell you something that is extremely important that you need to be aware of and you need to help fight for. So if you want to help, go to the website and let our voices be heard and our actions feared, as what all major powers in this world forget is that the people have the true say in what flies and doesn't. After all, it's all of us that can affect them in two ways: socially and their wallets. The everyday person has very little power on their own, but together as a collective, hence the internet, well, let's just say a battle is not won by one person, but by many. Thanks for watching, guys. Good luck.